Hi guys, I hope you're doing well. Now the paper you all are seeing on your screen is the O-level IGCSE Economics Paper 1 MCQs that happened on the 5th of June. And I'm going to be solving this paper to the best of my abilities, and then you guys can sort of compare your answers and then we can discuss in the comment section below. In case you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and share the video as much as possible with others so that they can compare their answers as well. However guys, before I solve the paper, I want you all to know that we do not have any official marking scheme as of now. Hence, there might be a possibility that there might be a minor oversight in solving these, or there might be not at all. Now, let's get started. Okay, guys, question number one says, what is a part of economic definition of scarcity? Unlimited wants, unlimited resources. So the answer is D for David, unlimited consumer wants. Question number two says, a country's production possibility curve moves from PPC 1 to PPC 2, so it's shifting outwards. What would cause this movement in the PPC? The correct answer is D for David, because obviously the factors that shift the PPC are obviously better education, higher investment, so it's true. Lower unemployment is false, because obviously when your unemployment goes down, so there's not a shift. In fact, there's a movement from inside the curve to either closer to the curve or on the curve, right? Because you are basically employing or utilizing your existing resources that have been unemployed or idle before. So lower unemployment does not shifts the PPC. Question number three says, a government spends 100 million on subsidizing wind farm construction instead of spending it on an increase in healthcare. Which economic concept does this spending decision illustrates? The correct answer is D for David, opportunity cost. Why? Because simply you could have spent 100 million on something else, and hence there is an opportunity cost of spending 100 million on subsidizing the wind farm. Okay, guys, question number four says, what is an example of macroeconomic indicator? The correct answer would be C, real GDP, because all the other answer options are referring to topics that are studied in microeconomics or refers to individuals and the micro aspect of econ, right? Question number five says, good X is demanded in two areas, Y and Z. The table shows the amount of X demanded in these areas at different prices. So, okay, so just like, we have individual demand curves of Mr. A, Mr. B. Here they have given the quantity demanded of in different areas, that is area Y and area Z. So for one thing that we clearly can see from this table is that the quantity demanded in area Y is more than area Z at each and every price. So at $5, people in area Y are demanding at least 100 units. Now, this is not a demand by one person. It might be demand of different people. You can call it market Y or market Z, right? So this is the quantity demanded in a particular area in that market, right? So we could clearly see that consumers, it's not B certainly, because consumers in area Y are richer than consumers in area Z. We can't really conclude that. Consumers in area Y want the good more than consumers in area Z. This could be the answer. Now let's see. Although this is not the answer. Consumers are more, there are more consumers living in area Y than area Z. Obviously, that's not the answer as well. We can't conclude that. The correct answer is A, because consumers in area Y are more willing and able than consumers in area Z. Definitely, because this is more willing and able is satisfying the definition of effective demand. In part C, they're saying that consumers in area Y want the good more, but want the good more, are they really able to buy it or not? So it's not really satisfying the accurate definition of demand. Okay. So A is the correct answer. Consumers in area Y are more willing and able than consumers in area Z to buy the good X, which is clearly showing that the quantity demanded of good X in area Y exceeds the quantity demanded of good X in area Z at each and every price. Question 6, which PED would cause an increase in total revenue if the price of good increases? So if the price of good goes up and if total revenue goes up, this rule exists for goods that have an inelastic demand. So the correct answer should be C, relatively inelastic. So question number 7 says the diagram shows a supply curve for coffee. The price of coffee goes up from P1 to P2. How would this benefit the firms in the coffee industry? Option A says a higher price gives the firms the ability to increase profit. So yes, this should be the correct answer, because obviously if the price goes up and the quantity supplied in return is going up, definitely this is giving an incentive for firms to increase profits. And that is the reason why they sort of, increase the quantity supplied in response to an increase in price, right? So question 7 should be A. All the other answer options are incorrect. They don't make sense. Question number 8 says, what might be an external benefit of an increase in the number of university graduates in an economy? Now, we all know what external benefit is. External benefit are all those benefits that are sort of received by people, by the third parties who are not party to, who are not related to the transaction. Or who are not related to the direct transaction, and they sort of enjoy those benefits without paying for them, right? And those third parties could be sort of individuals, they could be maybe animals, they could be sort of trees, environment, they could be it could be the atmosphere, it could be people living around a community. So third party could be any person, not necessarily individual, any other person who will be affected because of, in a positive way, because we're talking about external benefit, who will be affected in a positive way. The third party could even be people in the economy, right? Who will be affected in a positive way, would be said or would be, known to exist as a third party. Because of any economic transaction that is taking place, right? So in this case, the economic transaction is, university graduates coming out of university. So if they come out of university and they enter the labor force, right? So the quantity and the quality of the labor force goes up, that causes growth in the economy, and economic growth ultimately results into more tax revenues for the government. And those tax revenues to the government is just because of these university graduates who sort of graduated just because they wanted to earn higher wages, which was their private benefit. But at the end of the day, they're sort of funding the government's tax sources, right? And the government would then spend back this tax revenue on the economy, on the society, in the form of unemployment benefits, transfer payments, infrastructure, education, healthcare subsidies. So all of these people who will benefit, in all these different economic agents or key people who will benefit from these tax revenues are considered third party to these transactions, and their benefit is considered as an external benefit because of an increase in the number of university graduates. So that makes B the correct answer: an increase in tax revenue from a more productive labor force, which will obviously result into economic growth. Question number 9 says, the price of a good increases, what would cause this? The correct answer should be B. The incomes of consumers rise. Definitely that would cause an increase in demand. When the demand goes up, ultimately price goes up. Question number 10 says, imposing a maximum price for a good is an example of which type of government policy? The correct answer should be C. Definitely it's not a fiscal monetary, neither a supply side policy. It's a regulation, because the government is sort of intervening in the market and controlling the price that the free market is, or the competitive market price or the free market price. And, that's it. C is the correct answer, regulation, because the government is fixing that price, below the equilibrium price. An effective maximum price is below the equilibrium price to sort of benefit the consumers, the poor consumers, basically. Question number 11 says, savers suffer as inflation rises to 4.4%. Which function of money is most involved in this statement? The correct answer should be C, store of value. Simple question. Question number 12 says, one of the functions of money is to act as a measure of value. Okay, so both simultaneous questions are on money. What does this mean? Money allows people to borrow and lend? No, this is not an answer. Money allows people to borrow and lend. Money allows people to save their surplus income? No. Money is used to buy goods and services. This is a medium of exchange function. Okay, so money allows people to borrow and lend is basically would be standard of deferred payment. Money is used to compare the worth of different goods. This is the correct answer, because with money you're able to measure the value of a good, right? So if a good is worth $10, then you need to pay $10 for that. So the $10 worth of that good, the price of that good is indicating the value of that good, right? So because of money, you're able to value the worth of the goods and services that are around you, right? Question number 13 says, which trade union activity will be beneficial for firms? The correct answer should be D. D for David, providing training which raises productivity of the workers, because obviously that would raise the productivity of the workers and ultimately result into more profits for the firms, because it will improve business efficiency, basically. Question number 14 says, what is not a variable cost? The correct answer should be D for David, rent, because rent is a fixed cost. All the others are your variable cost, okay? Hey guys, question number 15 says, what is the definition of a firm's revenue? The correct answer would be A, that is money received from sales, because revenue means sales price times quantity, okay? So yeah, 15A. Question 16 says, what could cause internal diseconomies of scale for a firm? Now, diseconomies of scale, we all know, is when your average cost is rising, when there's too excessive growth, too much growth, which is too quick, not planned, not administered properly. It becomes a problem for the business then, right? And then that sort of deteriorates your business efficiency and your productivity, and that results into higher average cost. So the correct answer should be B. B for boy, a merger with another firm that results in slower decision making. Because the thing is that when the decision making will slow down, it would affect your business efficiency, would affect your productivity of the business, productivity of the workers. everything will go down the drain, and then definitely average cost will rise. Question number 17 says the government decides to leave direct taxes unchanged but to increase indirect taxes. What is this policy intended to achieve? An increase in the value of the exchange rate. This will definitely not happen. To redistribute incomes from higher to lower income groups. B is not the answer, because increasing indirect taxes would sort of work the opposite ways, because your indirect taxes are regressive in nature, right? So that would create more unequal distribution of income. To reduce a budget deficit, yes, this would be the answer, because in order to reduce a budget deficit, you need to increase your tax revenues, right? And so the government is increasing indirect taxes like value added tax. So, for example, if the government is increasing fuel tax, carbon taxes, sugar taxes, fuel duties, etc., definitely it is going to sort of increase the government's revenues and hence reduce budget deficit. By the way, budget deficit is when your government spending is more than the tax revenues that the government receives, right? So you need to sort of reverse this process where you increase tax revenues more than the amount you are spending. Question 18 says, what is most likely the reason to increase government subsidies? The correct answer should be to increase the consumption of merit goods, because that's would definitely, by subsidizing merit goods, you sort of make merit goods cheaper, and hence that would incentivize consumption because quantity demand would go up. So B should be the answer. Question number 19 says, which people are most likely to gain at the time of inflation? The correct answer should be D for David, those who are repaying borrowed money, because we know that borrowers are gainers, since your real value of the debt is going down, and the real value of the money that you're paying back. So for the borrowers, it's actually benefiting them. So 9 should be D. Okay, guys, question number 20 says the government of country Z announces an increase in spending on workplace training. What is the effect of this supply side policy to be? So obviously this is a supply side policy because the government is investing in training. So this should definitely increase the country's economic growth rate, shift the productive capacity and the LRAS to the right, on the PPC to the right. So 20 should be C. 21 says the table shows GDP in dollars, billion dollars for a country over a period of 3 years. Year 1, 2, 3 is given, real GDP is given. What does the GDP data indicate for the country between 1 and 3? Now, a reduction in the rate of inflation, no, this will not be the answer, because your real GDP could also rise because of a rise in AD, and that would sort of be inflationary. So inflation would go up in that case. An increase in the rate of economic growth, yes, this will be the answer. My bad. This will not be the answer, because the rate of economic growth is actually going down from 4.8% to 1.86%. From year 1 to year 2, the rate of economic growth in terms of real GDP is 4.87%. You take the percentage change of these values, and then you take the percentage change of these values. So the rate of economic growth is going down. However, although the rate of economic growth is going down, but still there is economic growth. So C should be the answer. 22 says, what is the likely consequence of a falling level of unemployment? Okay, so downward pressure on wage rates? No. Increase in welfare benefits should actually go down. In fact, rise in absolute poverty should go down. So D should be the answer, rise in income tax revenues, because when you are employed, then your income tax revenues would go up as well. Okay, question number 23 says the diagram shows Italy's unemployment rate and GDP per head. When do Italy's unemployment rate and GDP per head rise at the same time? The answer is B, because you can see that in B, the unemployment rate that is between 2007 and 8 is rising, and then during this time in 2007 and 2008, we can see that Italy's GDP per head is rising as well. The graph is going up. So this is the only time period where both are simultaneously increasing. So the correct answer should be B, between 2007 and 2008. Question number 24 says, during a recession, it's a good question, 24. During a recession, many people in a city become unemployed and their incomes fall. Some people can no longer pay the rent of their house or buy the food they need. What is the effect of a recession? Now they've given in a table, they've given two columns, absolute and relative poverty. First, we need to understand what they are. Absolute poverty, we know, is the inability to afford basic necessities and afford basic living standards. Usually when you're earning less than $1.5 to $2 a day, while relative poverty, on the other hand, is when your household income is below the median, average medium income that is required to maintain an average living standard in society, right? So it's like when it's giving you a relative distribution, or a distribution of income, actually, the gap between the rich and the poor, sort of indicating how unequal or equal income distribution is in society. So if households are usually receiving less than 50 to 60% of the average median incomes, then there is relative poverty in society, right? And the more that is, if the extent is huge, then the more unequal distribution the income is. So we know that recessions may make the poor more worse off than the rich, right? Because they are economically powerful. They might have huge savings with them. They might sustain that, right? They have huge wealth. The rich are sitting with lots of cash and lots of wealth. So recessions may not necessarily hit them as much as they may hit the poor. So that's going to worsen the it's going to worsen the relative poverty and the income distribution in society. So that's why relative poverty will increase, and so will absolute poverty, because a lot of people will, who were not able to already afford basic necessities, may further not be able to afford more basic. I mean, their living standard will deteriorate further. So the absolute poverty will definitely worsen. So people who were not in the absolute poverty frame or timeline, or in that line, in that zone, in that range, will now fall in that range after a recession, right? So A is the correct answer. Okay, guys, question number 25 says the Peruvian government set itself a target of reducing the number of its population in poverty. So basically, we want to reduce poverty levels. What change does not indicate that the Peruvian government had made progress towards this target? Now, obviously, in order to reduce poverty, there's a combination of factors that need to be considered, like improvement in healthcare, education, economic growth, etc., etc. So first of all, a rise in employment does indicate that ultimately a rise in employment will improve living standards, incomes, and definitely bring the economy out of poverty. So this is not the answer. A rise in life expectancy also indicates that ultimately the economy is going to be lifted out of poverty, or will reduce. Poverty levels will go down because it's improving healthcare, and your nutrition levels and your average age is rising, and it's showing that the economy's welfare and living standards are high. A rise in the level of adult literacy rate will obviously result into improvement in your quality and quantity of labor, is a sign of economic growth, will lead to economic growth, will lead to incomes, will lift the economy out of poverty. B is the answer, a rise in infant mortality. Infant mortality rate refers to number of deaths per 1,000 live births of children under the age of 1. So definitely, if your infant mortality rate is rising, it's a sign of malnutrition, which could possibly be due to sort of not being able to conquer the problem of poverty, right? So 25B is the answer. 26 says, what is not a reason for the decline in manufacturing industries in developed economies in recent years? Growth of newly industrialized competitor countries is a reason, basically, for a decline in manufacturing sector. Innovation of automated production methods should be the answer, because a rise in cost of factor inputs will decline, will reduce output in your manufacturing industries and ultimately maybe decline them. Considerable skill shortages as school leavers prefer to work in service sector. This will also cause the manufacturing sector to go down. So B is the correct answer. Question 27 says, the table shows countries' exports and imports. So what is the country's balance of trade in goods and services? The correct answer is C. Why? Because simply you need to take the difference of exports and imports. This is 10 million, a surplus on your balance of trade in goods, and there's a 3 million deficit on the balance of trade in services. So the overall balance of trade in goods and services is a 7 million surplus. Question number 28 says a country exports steel to country Y at a price that is below the cost of production. So basically, country X is dumping its product, steel, basically in country Y. This has led to a foreign demand for steel in country Y. Obviously, what is the method of trade protection that country Y could use to reduce the imports of steel from country X? So definitely, country Y needs to come up with trade barriers so that it could protect its domestic infant firms. So definitely apply anti-dumping tariffs, so that, because tariff is basically a trade protection or a protectionist measure that this country could use to sort of protect its domestic firms, because country X is dumping its products that is selling below cost of production, right? Question number 29 says, what would increase the demand for a country's currency on the forex market? The correct answer for 29 should be an increase in its exports, because when the country's exports will rise, then the demand for currency, for the exporting country's currency in the forex market will rise, because obviously, you need to pay the exporting country in its own currency. So the demand for that currency will definitely rise in the forex market the more that country exports. It's the demand for its own currency is rising, basically. Okay, so 29 should be C, an increase in exports. 30 says country X has a persistent deficit on the current account of its BOP. Which policy measure is most likely to improve this situation? The first is lowering import quotas. Okay, lowering income tax would increase disposable incomes, and probably people will end up importing more, so it will worsen the deficit. Lowering import tariffs would sort of make the situation worse, because when you lower the tariff, you're sort of reducing the protection, and that would again worsen the deficit. Lowering export subsidies is not the answer as well. Lowering import quotas is the answer, because when you're lowering import quotas, you're sort of reducing the limit, so import quotas work in this way, that it's a limit, right? So for example, if your quota is set at 30 units, that's the maximum that you can import and not more than 30. So you're lowering the quota means that you're lowering the maximum limit that you've allowed. So you're now only allowing 10 units to be imported. So that's going to improve the situation of your imports. It's basically going to reduce your current account deficit in that sense, right? Because now you're only allowing 10 units to be imported, right? So for 30, A is the correct answer. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Share this video as much as possible with your friends so that they can calculate their scores. And now let's meet in the comment section. Till then, take lots of care, enjoy your vacations, and all the best for your results.